What I'm really excited to show you is how to use the well, Datadog MCP server, but really MCP server to help inform developers while they're making their applications. How can like real-time telemetry data help inform development choices?
Okay.
And really, how does it work to set it up in the first place?
All right.
Um,
Great.
yeah. So I've made this app. It's called Commit Story. It's a demo app. It's not the point of what we're talking about today. But what it does is it's triggered on a Git commit. It collects Git data, it collects your Git diff, it knows all the code changes. It also looks at your it's meant to be used with Claude Code. So it looks at your conversation that you had with Claude Code, and then it makes an automatic journal entry for you. But you don't have to take my word for it. I'm going to show you. So let's flip over. This is Claude Code. It's my favorite friend these days. We spend a lot of time together. I think my real friendships have suffered a little bit. Okay, so here we go. I'm using a tool called Whisper Flow so that I can talk to Claude Code or any tool with my voice. So I'm not going to type right now. So here we go. Claude Code commits the stage changes with the message AI Tools Lab. Woo, woo, woo. Ow, ow. All right, there we go. So we're going to do our commit. So I've requested that Claude Code do a commit, and Claude Code's going to think about it. Let's see if the woo, 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 ow, ow makes it to the commit message. Ah, no, it didn't. In fact, it doesn't have a closing uh, quote. I wonder if that's going to mess it up. Okay, so here we go. So my tool is designed to be run in the background, but I do have a dev mode. So in this case, it's in the foreground and it's showing me some logs. And one of the things it's showing me that will matter later, I have to give it a little more time to make all the things. Um, so here's what I want to show you for one thing. This is a new file that just got made, and now and this is a journal entry that's showing that everything that I did in my last commit. So it's showing me a summary. So I made a doc called AI Tools Lab Prep, and I had a conversation with Claude Code about what kind of audience is watching AI Tools Lab. What are they going to be excited to see? And then I have a development dialogue section. So that's actually like real quotes that I had with the assistant, like part of a real conversation. And then there's a technical decision. So it's supposed to root out anytime you're weighing options and like trying to and making a choice, and it's recording what choice you made when you were developing and why. So that's the app itself, but that's again the demo, not the point. The point is that I've been using telemetry to help me while I'm developing. So I want to look more at these logs. I can't control. Oh, there we go. So these are the logs, and among other things, the logs outputted a trace ID for me. So in my code base, I'll show you a little bit later, every function is heavily instrumented, and I used OpenTelemetry for my instrumentation. So what I'm doing is taking all that telemetry data, I'm sending it to my Datadog backend. I have an agent running. So I'm sending it to the OTLP endpoint. I'm sending it to the Datadog backend, and then I can use the Datadog MCP server to have access to all of my telemetry data at development time. So with this trace ID, I don't even have to actually do with it anything with it. What I'm going to do is talk to Claude Code some more. So here we go. Hey Claude Code, get the trace ID from the console logs, use that plus correlated logs and metrics, and draw me a diagram of how this system works. So I want to minimize token usage, so search smartly, don't go wild. And then I also really want to focus on how chat data in particular gets prepared and filtered in for the downstream generator functions. And again, don't use too many tokens. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. The so I showed you those three sections of the journal. Each of these under the hood has its own journal generator function. So each one of these is making its own It's using OpenAI Mini, ChatGPT Mini. So I want to know it's receiving, well, we'll talk it over, but it's receiving like piles and piles of chat data. And how's it filtering that? And what does that look like? So yeah, it's searching logs. Cool. So there are some things that I have thought were especially good and some things that I wonder about. One is that, one is that, so telemetry data has been really helpful to help when I'm like coding with Claude and Claude's making a bad assumption for me to be like, hey, look at the telemetry data. What does that tell you? So I had a session where one of my the development dialogue specifically, it wasn't generating, it was timing out. And so the first thing I had Claude Code do was like look at recent commits. What of these recent, like what changed recently that might have made this function start timing out? And one thing that changed was that I started passing in a description of the, like some metadata, like a better description, like, okay. I wonder if I could show the code. No. I started making my prompts a little bit bigger. And so Claude Code just latched onto this idea that because the prompt is a little bit bigger, that's what's timing out the function. And I was like, there's no way. I added like an extra paragraph or two of information that's not making this function time out. But it just wouldn't let go of that assumption. So I could say, here's what I want you to do, Claude Code. I want you to look at what was going into this function 3 weeks ago when it wasn't timing out. Look at what's going into this function today and compare those two things and figure out what's different. And so with the telemetry data, since everything was instrumented, it was able to do that and make that comparison and be like, oh, here's the problem. We had filtered all of this raw chat data and something broke and it's not getting filtered anymore. So we were able to get right at the root and I was able to get it off of its bad idea. So that's just,
Yeah,
a story.
I, I love that. I mean, you see lots of examples of where the agents and Claude Code or whatever you're using are apparently going back and searching through logs to try to understand what happened or didn't happen. But now you can, say, hey, no, like this is the reality of what is going on. I've already captured it. It's over in Datadog. Just go look at it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing, if you use Playwright or a lot of other MCP servers of just like, I don't want to be the middle person anymore of like saying, you told me that it was perfect. I looked at it. It's not perfect. You two need to get your story straight. So I'm just going to let you talk to each other directly.
Yes, let's solve this at the root.
Yeah.
So, just to give you an idea that it understands from this one trace, and because of the correlated logs and metrics, it understands completely what's happening in my system. So it's there are different collectors happening. One collecting Git data, one collecting Claude messages, and it's being very specific about how those Claude messages. It knows how they're stored on my locally on your computer. I've also added functionality to group the messages by session. If you're working in Claude and you have two tabs going at once in the same project, those two tabs have different session IDs. So before passing it to the generator function, it'll group those. And then it will filter all that chat data. So it's filtering out everything that's not in this project. It's filtering everything that's not in the git commit time window. And then it's also filtering like just extra noise that's in the messages. Um, oh, and it knows about my MCP servers. There are some MCP servers that I wasn't going to talk about, and I'm still not going to because that's added. It's not the point. And then it goes to those three journal generator functions, and then it gets formatted. It gets saved. It gets printed, and all of that stuff. So it has the full picture of what's happening, and then it can also zoom in on any particular detail of what's happening. Another way I found it really useful, let's just take that same example where my dialogue function was getting unfiltered chat and we figured it out. The first thing it wanted to do was filter the chat at the dialogue function level. And I'm just like, oh no, if it's filtering, if it's too big for dialog generator, it's probably also too big for the other two generators. So here, use the telemetry and see what data is being passed into all three. And like, sure enough, it like the first solution it proposed would have technically fixed it, but it was not a good solution because it wouldn't have solved eventual problems with the other two generators. So then it's like, okay, here's a place in the flow where it makes sense to add this functionality. Let's add it right here. I'll write it here and then it can get to all three. And I was like, but wait a minute. I'm pretty sure like this has been working well for months and it's only now breaking. So I don't think like a new functionality is needed. So now I want you to look at like what was happening 3 weeks ago to see when it was working, what was happening differently than now. It's like, oh, when I look at it 3 weeks ago, I can see it's passed through this filter function that already exists in your code base. But then when we added the session filtering, the session grouping, it started getting bypassed at that time. So the debugging was amazing. And the thing about that scenario is if I would have let it write it in the first place, it would have fixed it. If I would have let it write it in the second place, it would have fixed it. And in neither case would it have used the existing functionality. So I think in general, like making code with your AI assisted coding agents is not terribly difficult, right? Like making something that works, we can do that. But making something that works and is efficient and keeps a clean code base that's not bloated, like that's actually a really hard problem. And I've found that telemetry has been really helpful in with solving that.
It's definitely given you a much more higher fidelity picture of not only what's going on right now, but what was going on in the past and comparing the
Yeah.
two, a little time machine situation where you're having a hard time articulating to the agent, like, what's wrong, what you need to do. I'm tired of this
Mhm.
conversation. Just go look.
Yeah. Yes. And what it does is it greps for keywords and does static code analysis, which isn't sometimes you just know what you're doing, what you're finding isn't where I want you to be. But just like the quick way to say just find it on your own is like here, take some telemetry data and figure out the truth of this. One thing I will say is the way traditionally instrumenting code directly has been something that's done for production use to understand how a developer's code is used in production. And I'm suggesting you instrument your code so that you can understand everything that's happening as a developer, everything that's happening while you're in development. And so that means I think there's a use case for adding telemetry to even small helper functions, which in the past you never would have wanted to do because that would have been very expensive to collect production level data on a helper function. So, like in my code base, I have an example in case for those of who are unfamiliar with instrumenting. I here's an example of a nope, sorry. I just want to yeah, there we go. So this is a function what I have highlighted. So this is a function, and what it does is it receives a date, and then it outputs year, month, day, month, or like these things because what we want to do is just build a file path from the date. That's all this helper function does. And so the business logic of this function is where'd it go? Is just this little bit here. And then all of the rest of this from the function start right here on line 34 to all the way down here is instrumentation. So, and just briefly to show you, it's a wrapper. So the trace starts. There's a tracer that starts. Yep, and then there's a tracer that ends. And then you can also add attributes to your trace. So the tracer itself is only going to record the amount of time it's spent executing that particular function. But you could add attributes to your trace to get more details about that amount of time. And so before people would be really strategic about how little they can collect and still have a good picture of what's going on because they want to be efficient with their data. And now I think there's a use case for instrumenting the bejesus out of your code. But doesn't that seem like a complete pain in the butt? So the thing that I'm working on is creating an agent that auto instruments code. So I
Hmm.
made one for myself in this code base, but it's very specific to this code base. But there's a tool called OpenTelemetry Weaver that helps you organization wide. Like it uses OpenTelemetry semantic conventions, but then any organization specific conventions you want to add on top of that, it has a centralized place to standardize everything that's going on. And so, as like the platform engineers or the we that can be defined at an organizational level and then be distributed throughout the organization. So I have my own ad telemetry agent, and then I have designs to because this open telemetry weaver project exists and I can rely on those standards, then I think I can build a telemetry agent that works for any code base or whatever. We'll see. I'm talking future stuff. So I'm doing like checking the Datadog connection. If that's going to fail, I don't what I just failed now. Like which it's identifying which code has changed. It's looking at the 5 most recent Git commits. If you don't, unless you specify a commit, it's doing operation analysis, and then it's also looking at if some telemetry got removed by the code thing. Do we want that telemetry to be removed? Is that a good thing, or does it need to be added back in? It's discovering what I have a telemetry standards document, so it's discovering what standards already exist. So it's reusing current standards instead of creating new standards every time. If there aren't, if it wants some telemetry that doesn't exist, then it's taking note of that and it's going to add it to the standards module. So it's gonna if it creates something, it's adding it back. It's determining the convention source. Oh, we're making sure that we're staying in line with OpenTelemetry convention. So we're actually looking up OpenTelemetry convention. So make sure we're not making up our own stuff when there if an OpenTelemetry semantic convention exists. Then it's finally instrumenting the code, and then it's doing some safety checks. So it's going to validate that it's good. This is all about instrumenting to make sure they're all correlated. You have to instrument a certain way to make sure, like your logger needs to happen from within your trace, and it needs to be associated with your trace ID for it to so there's some magic that happens in there to make sure you're getting the full end-to-end span between functions and to make sure the logs, metrics, and traces all stay correlated. And then we have a validation step. And then we're going to query Datadog to make sure that it's actually, we're going to run it, make sure it's in Datadog, and then we can declare that this new function has been instrumented. So that's the agent. I think that's everything I have to say.
Awesome.
This
I
is
love
kind of an
that.
abrupt end. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, the uncomfortable truth is that there's just more and more, black boxes and things that we don't quite understand. Yet we really need to understand what's going on within the
Hmm.
realms of software development. And I think coming up with ways to capture it, instrument things to capture it, finding good ways to go out and
Yes.
do something with it. You can't just like capture it. Like either you or the agent have to do something with this information that you're like, capturing, telling the agent to go look at it via MCP, go look at the actual numbers and make some decisions. I think these are the things that we're all drifting towards anyway.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
another thing I found that I enjoyed doing it with it was it helped inform some of the development choices I made. Like when I was deciding how many quotes to feature in the dialogue section, I would be like, about how many user quotes are usually passed into the function in the first place. Do I want 10%? Do I want 30%? Knowing the average number and the mean was very helpful in that case.
Hmm. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, Whitney, thanks so much for sharing all that. That was super useful and helpful and awesome. And yeah, we look forward to having you again on the show in the future, learning something
Awesome.
else from
Thanks
you.
for having me. It was really fun.